Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been assembled here to deliver a verdict upon a matter that strikes at the heart of sportsmanship and integrity. The defendant stands accused of having cheated in the New York City Marathon, an event celebrated for its spirit of endurance and fair sport. The charge against the defendant is serious. It is alleged that by circumventing the established rules of the marathon, the defendant not only sought personal glory through deceit, but also undermined the trust and respect that the public bestows upon the participants of this esteemed race. As jurors, your duty is to weigh the evidence presented before you and to determine, beyond a reasonable doubt, whether the defendant did indeed engage in the actions as charged. The prosecution has presented evidence suggesting that the defendant intentionally bypassed certain checkpoints, thereby shortening the distance they ran. Furthermore, it is alleged that the defendant used unauthorized means of transportation within the course, an act strictly prohibited by marathon regulations. The defense, on the other hand, has argued that the evidence is circumstantial and that the defendant's actions were not premeditated, but were a result of confusion and disorientation during the race. They contend that the defendant, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the event, inadvertently strayed from the path and, upon realizing their error, attempted to rejoin the race at the point of departure. It is not your role to decide on the morality of the defendant's actions or to consider the repercussions that their conviction might have on their personal life. Your verdict must be based solely on the facts as they have been presented in this courtroom. You must consider whether the actions of the defendant constitute a deliberate attempt to gain an unfair advantage, and whether such actions meet the legal definition of cheating as set forth in the statutes. In your deliberations, you are to consider the following. Did the defendant knowingly and willfully engage in actions that would give them an unfair advantage in the marathon? Were the actions of the defendant in violation of the explicit rules and regulations of the New York City Marathon? Has the prosecution provided sufficient evidence to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant cheated? The concept of beyond a reasonable doubt is fundamental to our justice system. It does not mean beyond a shadow of a doubt, nor does it require absolute certainty. However, it does require that after considering all the evidence, you are firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt. If, after thorough and impartial consideration of all the evidence, you find that the prosecution has met its burden of proof, then you must find the defendant guilty. If, however, you find that the prosecution has failed to meet this burden, or if there remains in your minds a reasonable doubt as to the defendant's guilt, then you must find the defendant not guilty. Remember, the defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty, and the burden of proof lies with the prosecution. The defendant has no obligation to prove their innocence. As you retire to the jury room, take with you not only the evidence and testimony presented, but also the solemn responsibility entrusted to you by the people of New York. Your verdict will not only determine the outcome of this case, but will also reaffirm our collective commitment to the principles of justice and fairness. Consider the testimony of the eyewitnesses who observed the defendant's behavior during the marathon. Reflect upon the digital evidence that tracks the movements of each participant. The integrity of the race relies on the honesty of its competitors. If one runner can evade the rules without consequence, it erodes the trust that is the foundation of this event. The defendant's intent is a critical element of this case. Did they act with a premeditated design to cheat, or was it a momentary lapse of judgment? This distinction is crucial, for it speaks to the character of the act. Cheating, in any form, is an affront to the spirit of competition, but the law distinguishes between a deliberate fraud and an unintentional infraction. Let your deliberations be guided by reason, compassion, and a steadfast adherence to the law. When you have reached a unanimous decision, you will return to this courtroom and deliver your decision. In your hands lies the power to uphold the sanctity of the marathon. Your verdict will send a message to all who participate in such events, that the virtues of honesty and integrity are paramount, and that those who seek to undermine these values will be held accountable. As you consider your verdict, Do so with the understanding that your decision will resonate far beyond the walls of this courtroom. I wish you all here good luck.